A turning point is something that changes world history. The French and Indian War completely changed the course of North America's history and in turn the history of the world. This war just about decided how North America would be settled in this modern era. This war determined the roots of all people over North America, yet the biggest impact this war had in North America was its major step toward the Revolutionary War. This event gave important experience to the people that would eventually lead the Revolutionary War. Without this event, the US and Canada may have never come to exist. Canada could still be under French rule, and the US could still be under British rule. The War for Canada, known as the French and Indian War, was a turning point in history because of its effects it had on North America and on the world. Before this event, there were three nations existing in what would someday be the US and Canada. British controlled the East, and Spain controlled Florida. British colonies had a population of about 1.5 million and ranged along the eastern coast of the continent, from Georgia in the south to Nova Scotia and Newfoundland in the north. The third nation with interests in the New World was France. France owned the majority of Canada and all of the Louisiana Territory. The French population numbered about 75,000 and was heavily concentrated along the St. Lawrence River Valley, with additional small settlements along the Mississippi River. French fur traders traveled throughout the St. Lawrence and Mississippi watersheds, did business with local tribes, and often married Indian women. It was a center point of French civilization in North America. It was where the capital of New France was located, and it was where New France did all of the trade. The French settlers were happy in New France. They made a lot of profit from trading fur and other goods. They were at peace with themselves and with the natives. In fact, they owed most of their success to the natives. Europeans were able to colonize North America and establish their new way of life due to the native people. The British treated the natives in an awful manner. As Chief Pontiac of the Ottawa tribe said in 1763,
"It is important for us, my brothers, that we exterminate from our land this nation which only seeks to kill us. When I go to the English chief and tell him that some of our comrades are dead, he makes fun of me and you. When I ask him for something for our sick, he refuses and tells me he has no need for us."
The British even at one point tried killing off the natives with foreign diseases on purpose to get them out of the way. A British fur trader named William Trent kept a journal while stationed at Fort Pitt. In the journal, he provided a specific example of the British doing this.
They made a speech letting us know that a great number of Indians were coming and that out of regard for us, they had prevailed on the Six Nations not to attack us. The commanding officer thanked them. Out of our regard to them, we gave them 2 blankets and a handkerchief out of the smallpox hospital. I hope it will have the desired effect.
This shows that even when the natives tried helping the British, they still simply tried to kill them. However, tensions began to rise when the British colonists wanted to spread west into the Louisiana Territory, and British entrepreneurs were trying to take over New France's fur trading industry. The British claimed that the fur trapping territory of Ohio was theirs, as the king had claimed it years before. However, the French had also claimed it years before and had been trapping in the area for a while. The first battles of the French and Indian War were fought here over this land. However, before the battles broke out in this territory, the British tried to move the French out peacefully. This is seen in the quote from the letter that Robert Dinwiddie, governor of Virginia, to the French commander of the Ohio country in October of 1753.
"The lands upon the river Ohio in the western part of the colony of Virginia are so notoriously known to be the property of the Crown of Great Britain that it is a matter of equal concern and surprise to me to hear that a body of French forces are erecting fortresses and making settlements upon that river, within His Majesty's domains. It becomes my duty to require your peaceable departure."
The governor told the French to leave, but the French did not budge at this request. Obviously, the main conflict was between the French and the British. However, the British also fought Native Americans in this war. These natives were working with the French. Land granted in North America by the British monarch was considered to extend from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, even though the location of the West Coast was unknown at the time. With the East Coast becoming increasingly crowded, settlers began migrating westward, destroying in the process the local natives' hunting area. These natives, in turn, became increasingly worried that they would lose the use of their land. The British were incredibly disrespectful to the natives in every aspect. The British were only interested in exploiting the land through the fur trade. The British stole the natives' land for this purpose. They tried to use deception to take the natives' land. As said by a native chief,
"We received from the proprietors yesterday some goods in consideration for our release of our lands. We know our lands are more valuable. You people daily settle these lands and spoil our hunting. We must insist that you leave."
This native chief was saying that British people tried getting him to give up his land for some small goods when he was smart enough to refuse. they moved onto his land anyway. This is what the British did in many cases. This is what the British did to anger them, and this is why the Native Americans joined the French in this war. These three nations, England, France, and Spain, would not be able to coexist in these lands without power struggles. Obviously, France was not willing to give up these lands due to the fact that it was a major place for trading. In an attempt to solve this problem, the French sent soldiers into these areas. The purpose of these soldiers was to confirm the original French claim to the territory, determine the level of British influence, and impress the Indians with the French show of force. This is when fighting first broke out, starting the war as seen in a line from George Washington's diary from 1754.
Reports of further French infiltration into the Ohio Valley continued to reach Williamsburg, and Governor Robert Dinwiddie made preparations to resist. Captain William Trent was ordered to raise a force of 100 men and march them to the Ohio.
These British soldiers marched to the Ohio and beat French troops in the first couple of battles of the French and Indian War. The British did ultimately come to dominate the colonial outposts, causing a turning point in the world's history. From the start of the war, it was clear which nation was stronger. The foreshadowing of who would eventually win the war is seen in this quote from 1758.
Sir, I do myself the honor of acquainting you that it has pleased God to crown His Majesty's arms with success over all his enemies upon the Ohio.
This is a letter from General John Forbes to British Prime Minister William Pitt. Forbes is telling Pitt that they have defeated the French in the Ohio Territory, showing that they are stronger. Britain's advantage to this war would lead them to their eventual victory, causing a huge turning point in the history of the world. The first major battle in this war on Britain's conquest of New France was at the French stronghold of Louisbourg. The British commander Wolfe took the fortress after a very long battle. This battle had to be the first move on Britain's part because before capturing the French colony of New France, they needed to control the St. Lawrence River, which would give the British a clear route to Quebec, the capital of New France. After much fighting ensued, the British were victorious. Britain now had a clear route to take control of all of North America. British troops assembled on the Isle of Orleans on the St. Lawrence River downstream from Quebec. A brigade had established itself on the bank of the river across from Quebec. Wolfe used these troops to relentlessly bombard Quebec with firepower that the French could not match. Wolfe had civilians' fields and villages burned, destroying all crops. In other words, he laid siege to Quebec by cutting off their main supply route of the St. Lawrence River and destroying all their food sources outside of Quebec. As a last desperate resort to take Quebec before the winter came, and cut off the British supplies by freezing the river, the British launched an attack in which they would go around Quebec and land on the shore behind it to flank the capital from higher ground. There were no French troops guarding this route. After landing, Wolfe and his troops made a treacherous hike up a rocky face of the landmass. By dawn, 4,500 British troops were assembled on the top of the cliff, ready for the final battle. Montcalm, the French general, assembled 5 regular French battalions, militia, and 1,000 Indians to Quebec. In the morning of the 13th of December, 1759, Montcalm noticed the lines of British troops positioned on the wide-open fields of Abraham outside of Quebec. Montcalm was surprised and hardly ready, but he sent out his army of French and Indians. It was a bloody battle. Wolfe had been shot 3 times in the battle, and with his last dying breath, commanded his troops to cut off the French retreat. Montcalm also died. Wolfe may have died, but was successful in taking Quebec. This was the major step in taking control of North America, which would completely change the way North America was settled. This, in turn, would cause a major turning point in North America's history. After the war, French ceded the rest of New France, except the islands of St. Pierre and Miquelon, to Great Britain and Spain at the Treaty of Paris, which ended the 7 Years' War. Britain received the lands east of the Mississippi River, including Canada, Acadia, and parts of Louisiana, while Spain received the territory to the west, the larger portion of Louisiana. This change in ownership was a turning point in North American history. The British also took revenge against Native American nations that fought on the side of the French. This factor played a key role in determining the multinational Indian revolt called Pontiac's War that erupted directly following the French and Indian War. One of the most important outcomes of the French and Indian War was that it trained people how to take up arms and fight, and trained men how to lead armies. There is no denying that if there had never been a French and Indian War, there may have not been a Revolutionary War. During the French and Indian War, the colonies that would become the U.S. were still owned by Great Britain. At this time, there were not many thoughts of revolution. However, after the war, they had a perfect motivation and set up to start a revolution. Their motivation was due to the heavy taxing by the British government that resulted from the war's debt. This escalation of tension led to the American Revolution. If it were not for this war, North America would be completely different. The United States may have not come to exist. Without this war, Canada could still be under French control today. This war changed how America was settled. It got rid of many Native American groups, expanded control of Spain that would later become part of the U.S., and took France out of North America. Overall, this war was without a doubt a huge turning point in the world's history and has had a large effect on our current world.